Well, we certainly know that Amazon is dominating the retail segment right now, thanks to the growth of e-commerce. But what do Amazon fulfillment centers mean for local economies in those towns or townships where those facilities are located? Some research done earlier this year by our guest Sergey Netasin, who is a professor of operations, information, and decisions here at the Wharton School. He's also senior vice dean for innovation and global initiatives. He was part of the research team looking into this, and he joins us right now. Sergey, great to catch up with you again. How are you, sir?
Very good. Thank you for having me, Dan.
Thank you. I think this is an interesting topic because we all, I think most of us have communities where we've seen a business come in, a big business, a well-known business, and you kind of wonder, you think, wow, that's got to be great for the community. But you dive into the data as to whether or not or how much it is a great thing for these local communities. First, I guess, give us the backstory on why this was such an important or an interesting piece for you and your team to look at.
Certainly, Dan. So the backstory is that there are lots of studies done previously on Walmart. And what we know is that when Walmart comes into town, lots of bad things happen. First of all, prices go down, which kills retail around Walmart, and many mom and pop stores go bankrupt. And then their employees get hired by Walmart at a much lower wage. And so there are several papers over the years, some back in the 90s, that shows that essentially an effect of Walmart coming into town, if at best it's zero and probably a little bit of a negative. Then there are some studies done on big factories that employ thousands of people, and we know that the effect is typically positive. Beyond that, we don't really know much about big facilities coming into town. And what's interesting about Amazon is that it has many of those facilities. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of warehouses which are popping up all around the world in the last decade or so. And they employ significant number of people. So that was kind of, the academic interest in me.
But usually, and like maybe this is a little bit of the policy side of it, when a company like Amazon or UPS or whoever it is, or an automaker is looking to build a facility in a certain area, the local government looks to bend over backwards to try and give that company tax breaks, benefits, whatever, so that it makes it more palatable for the company to come into that town and put up a facility.
That is absolutely true. And in our case, we don't know how much local governments contributed. It's a very complicated formula. There are some tax breaks, there are some, land subsidies and so on. In certain cases, we see some local news about how much the government tried to attract the facility. Certainly, there was lots of publicity about Amazon HQ2 when it was open in Virginia. So we see bits and pieces, but that's not the data that we had, unfortunately.
Right. And so, in terms of what you were looking at, I guess employment is part of it. Median income is probably part of it. And I read that probably poverty, looking at the poverty side of this, is also included as well.
Exactly, yeah. So we looked at those three variables and we looked at the county level. There are different levels you can look at state, probably at the state level. It's hard to see an impact because states are big. And, if you go all the way down to, say, zip code level or, census block level, there's not much data available. So typically, this kind of negotiations with local government, they happen at the county level. And that's where we find a significant increase in employment, and we find a significant decrease in poverty, and we find a significant increase in median household incomes.
Is the expectation that I guess it has to be that there's a long term element to having a facility like this. Like if Amazon's going to make an investment to put a big fulfillment center in your area, the expectation is they're going to keep it there for a while. And so that level of employment is probably somewhat constant as well, that it's going to be there for a while.
Absolutely, and the numbers that we find, they're average over the first 3 years, but certainly they persist for a long time period. I think what is the most interesting thing that we find is that there is direct employment by Amazon. Say you open a facility, you have 3,000 people, say, working there. Some are smaller, some are bigger. But what we find is that there is a multiplier effect of about two. So for every direct job that Amazon creates by employing people directly, there are more jobs created around this facility. And as you can imagine, many of those jobs are probably in deliveries, right? So someone has to hire these people, UPS, USPS. Then there are companies popping up that are delivery service providers for Amazon. Then there is Amazon Flex, which are gig workers also working and delivering packages. And then, of course, there is retail. You have to feed people who work at the warehouse. For
Sure.
a while, there is some construction going on, then someone has to do maintenance and so on. So that's kind of an important thing to know, that actually more people get jobs than what directly is offered by Amazon.
And so are you able to tell as well, not only what happens to the incomes of the workers who are there? Obviously, they're going to get paid for the work they're doing, but that other component, that outside component, like is it somewhat of a rising tide raises all boats philosophy?
Exactly. So the median household income is for the entire county, right? And we show that this increase is about 2.3% for the entire county, which of course means for people who got employed directly or indirectly, the increase is probably much higher. But overall, when you even aggregate it for a much bigger county, you still observe increase in median.
But the poverty question of this, I think, is very important. It's very interesting as well that if you have these components of rising employment and an element of rising income, you would expect that there's going to be a downside impact on the poverty level in a particular area.
Exactly. Our other work that we've done at Amazon, where we like looked at, and I have to say that I am working at Amazon 1 day a week, and that's where the data comes from. Data comes directly from Amazon, so kind of a full disclosure there. We do find that a lot of people join Amazon this is as a first job, so they did not have a job before, they did not have income before, and so for them it's kind of a drastic increase in income. Others join from fast food and services and other kind of retail. And because Amazon has substantially higher pays than many of those places, so Amazon established $15 minimal pay across the company for a while, since 2018, for example. That also leads to this increase in median household.
And so does data like this, and maybe this is part of the process that Amazon had when they started to think about these facilities, but does it impact the decisions of where they put these fulfillment centers so that they can have the maximum benefit for the people in a particular area?
Um, Absolutely. So there is a lot of thought that goes into locating a warehouse, and there are all kinds of considerations going. One is, of course, being close to demand. So essentially, what we see is there are very few kind of counties with very small population where warehouses would be located, and that makes sense. There is just no one there to serve around. Another one is locating close to supply. So you really want some people to work at the warehouse, and if you locate in the middle of the desert, there's no one going to be there to work for. Um, and so we had to account for this because it's not straightforward. It's not like warehouse gets selected randomly. So if you just look at the impact of Amazon warehouse, you might get into this issue that warehouses are located with intention.
Right. And it's not like they're going to put as you kind of alluded to, they're not going to put a facility in a desert and then all of a sudden a town is going to pop up around it.
No. You also have to have other things, some road access and, some, because trucks are going to be going back and forth and so on. And of course, if you look at big counties, all of the big counties, which would be a million plus in population, they all have Amazon warehouses because that's demand, that's supply, right? And so we've been looking mostly at medium-sized counties, because the way we look at this problem, we look at the counties that gets an Amazon warehouse, and then we compare its development to counties that did not get an Amazon warehouse, and then we see the differences. So that's kind of a methodological design.
Anything stand out that really grabbed you from doing this research?
Um, I think what's remarkable is how strong the effects are, and we used several methodologies. We also used some public data to test robustness of our results, and results were very, very strong. There was some methodological challenges, like because of the COVID, we had to stop our timeline in 2017, because COVID is kind of weird. Lots of things went differently, and so we could not look at the most recent years. And frankly, the biggest impact is probably more recently, because Amazon increased its minimal wage to $15 in 2018. So I think, if anything, our results are very kind of a conservative, on the conservative side. So that, I think, is one thing. And then, of course, the multiplier. So we found that multiplier is 2. So for every person that Amazon hires, another job is created elsewhere in the county. So that is remarkable. And this kind of results in the past, academics found for big factories. But nothing like that has ever been observed, say, for Walmart or for other retail facilities.
Thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you, Dan, for having me. Great pleasure as always.
Yes, sir. Sergey Netasin, who is a professor of operations, information, and decisions here at the Wharton School.